Joining me is Sally Ann Wilson, CEO of the Public Media Alliance. The tenor of this panel, Sally Ann, was really about the idea of protecting and I'd say bolstering, going beyond protecting what exists now, public media around the world. And the conference has been overarchingly about media freedom, but I'm curious how funding equates to freedom when you're talking about public broadcasters.
It's not just a matter of funding. I think I'd say fundamentally it's a matter of awareness, public awareness, political awareness of the role that public media plays in society. So we've heard today from Giacomo Mazzoni from the European Broadcasting Union that actually even individual journalist freedom is stronger in countries with a good, strong, robust public media system. So I think it's making sure that it's not down to the penny of how they're funded. Funding is important. There's been a big tendency in recent years to keep wanting to fund new technologies, new ideas. And actually, with public media, particularly in countries like Canada, with CBC Radio Canada, other public broadcasters there, we have something that works. And we just need to invest in it, we need to promote it, and we need to raise awareness about it. Because worldwide, for Canada, you could read what's happening in Australia, what's happening in the heart of Europe. These things can change very quickly when governments change, when political pressure changes, and then suddenly we no longer have that public media institution that we all love to criticise, but it's our friend and it's there for our good and it's there to underpin our democracy and inform our democracy.
In the context of CBC in Canada, since you bring it up, and obviously since it's my home country, even there, the board that governs it is appointed by the government of the day. Now, it still prides itself of being independent as far as news coverage goes, and I think for the most part it does a good job at keeping a wall there. But how do you maintain independence and also being entirely reliant on government? Because government could, any party in power, drop funding at the drop of a hat. And we have seen this happen, or at the very least, governments refusing to put more funding in when it's requested.
I think the governance models for public media vary around the world. Obviously, it originated in the UK with the BBC, and that licence fee model is a robust one because it does keep some separation from government. But we've also seen Swedish Radio today talked about the foundation that funds public media in Sweden. I think in most countries it is a system not unlike that of governance, unlike that in Canada for CBC Radio Canada. And I think we're always aware that there's going to be a tension between governments and public media. That means actually it's working quite well. But it's how we make sure that that independence stays in place. And I think there's nothing that really alarms me in terms of the model you have in Canada. I think it's one that's copied very, if you have board members appointed by an independent public appointments commission, somebody still from government usually appoints the person who's doing it from the independent public appointments commission. So as long as there is a board, as long as that is, works well with management, as long as there is that clear independence shown in every report that the public media does, then I think you're home safe and dry. But it is something we have to guard and we have to watch all the time.
What's your view of state broadcasters? And I'm saying that term to differentiate from what our Swedish friend said on the panel about broadcasters that are set up under an entirely different business model. But what's your view on them ultimately competing on more commercial enterprises? So one big example is where the public broadcaster of a country may bid to be the official carrier of the Olympics against private companies, or bidding to carry award shows, and setting up a CBC in Canada has online columns, satire sites, these things, which are no doubt relevant, but private media companies are concerned that they're fighting against a behemoth they can't match in funding.
I think for many, many years we've heard the argument from commercial media players that there's an unfair bias in funding. I don't agree with that. I think that actually public media has, by and large, it's country specific, a very clear context of what it can compete with, as you say, or have as rights. Now, very often, national sporting rights, events that are in the public interest of that particular country, that particular locale, they are important that the public media carries them. Because this isn't something about how people pay to watch it or pay to engage with it. it's there. It's part of their national DNA. And so that's where it's not competition, because those commercial providers very often want to charge for it. And public media is about universal access. It's about something that every citizen in the country, however poor, wherever they live, rural or urban, has a right to watch. And in many cases, I think that has to be sport as well.
So I guess the one question I would ask in conclusion to follow up on that is, do you accept or reject the premise that public media is best served fulfilling voids in existing markets?
Certainly not. There's no way that public media is just there to fulfill a void. I think public media is there as a centre DNA of any country's existence, of any democracy's existence. If we start looking at just the deficit funding model, as it's called within public media circles, then that's going to fail. It has to be there, it has to be robust and acknowledged by governments as part of what the media system is. It has to be multi-platform. In the multimedia world, we're not saying it has to just be radio and television. It has to be, we heard today about the innovations, but it has to be there and it has to be central. And I think that's what we're hoping to build global awareness was. Canada, CBC Radio Canada, they're a founding member of PMA, they're on the board of PMA, and I think we're looking forward to working with them to ensure that it's robust in Canada and it's robust worldwide.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.